When a red wine spill at a high society gala leaves heiress Vivian Carlyle humiliated, a hotel maintenance worker steps in and changes everything. But can love survive when the past steps out of the shadows? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The Washington Grand Hotel's ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and the glitter of diamond jewelry worn by the capital's elite. Vivian Carlyle stood at the entrance, her hand clutching her small beaded purse so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Tonight was her first appearance alone since her breakup with Senator Richard Harmon's son, Bradley. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, smoothing down her white silk gown that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 25, Vivian had spent her entire life in these circles, yet tonight felt different. Her mother's words from their morning phone call echoed in her mind. "Darling, are you sure you want to attend? People will talk. Bradley will be there with that awful Kimberly woman." Heads turned, whispers followed. She held her chin high, her honey blonde hair swept into an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings her grandmother had left her. "Vivienne," a familiar voice called out. It was Melissa, her childhood friend, who had remained loyal even after the breakup. "You look stunning. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," Vivienne admitted, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing waiter. "But I refuse to hide. This is my city too." "That's the spirit," Melissa said, linking arms with her. "Come say hello to the Hendersons. They've been asking about you." As they made their way across the room, Vivian felt the weight of stares. Some sympathetic, others curious, and a few, like those from Bradley's mother, were downright hostile. Bradley and Kimberly were stationed near the center of the room, surrounded by the usual circle of political offspring and trust fund babies. Kimberly, draped in a tight red dress that left little to the imagination, laughed too loudly at something Bradley said. "Ignore them," Melissa whispered. The night progressed better than Vivian had expected. The dinner was exquisite, the conversation tea and pleasant, and she began to relax. Maybe she could do this, reclaim her place in society without Bradley's arm to lean on. Then came the champagne toast. "Ladies and gentlemen," the charity chairman announced, "please raise your glasses to honor our generous donors who make the Children's Hospital expansion possible." Everyone stood. Vivian's table was unfortunately placed directly across from Bradley and Kimberly's. As she raised her glass, she accented. Entally made eye contact with Bradley. His familiar blue eyes, once filled with promises of forever, now held nothing but cold indifference. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Kimberly, glass in hand, turned too quickly and stumbled toward Vivian. The red wine in her glass splashed directly onto Vivian's pristine white gown, spreading like a bloodstain across the expensive silk. "Oh my goodness," Kimberly exclaimed, her hand covering her mouth in mock horror. "How clumsy of me." The room fell silent before erupting in gasps and murmurs. Someone snickered, then another. Soon, poorly disguised laughter rippled through the tables. Vivian stood frozen, her face burning with humiliation. The white gown, her armor for the evening, was ruined. Bradley's face showed a flicker of what might have been regret before he turned away, refusing to meet her eyes. "What a disaster," someone whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "That's the Carlyle girl. Didn't her fiancé leave her last month? Poor thing, she should have stayed home." Vivian's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. Run or stay? Laugh it off or acknowledge the humiliation? Her mind raced, but her body remained paralyzed. That's when she noticed him. A tall figure in the hotel's maintenance uniform had paused his work near the exit. Dark eyes met hers across the room, not with pity but with quiet understanding. Without hesitation, he set aside his mop and walked toward her. The room grew quiet again as this unexpected player entered the scene. He moved with a dignity that seemed at odds with his uniform. Strong shoulders, broad hands, and a face that spoke of hard work and resilience. When he reached Vivian, he knelt down before her, not like a knight before a princess, but like someone who simply knew what needed to be done. He carefully lifted the edge of her gown from the wine-soaked floor. "This doesn't define you," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Something in his tone, the complete absence of pity, broke through her shock. She looked down at him, this stranger who had crossed invisible social boundaries to offer help when no one else would. "Thank you," she whispered. He stood and offered his arm. "Let's get you out of here." Without thinking, Vivian placed her hand on his arm. Together, they walked toward the exit, her wine-stained dress dripping a trail behind them. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Even Bradley looked stunned. Outside, in the cool night air, Vivian finally exhaled. The maintenance man released her arm and stepped back, giving her space. "Are you all right?" he asked. Vivian laughed shakily. "Not really, but I will be." She looked at him properly for the first time. He was younger than she'd initially thought, maybe late 20s. His dark hair was cut short, and his eyes held a depth that surprised her. "Why did you help me?" He shrugged. "I know what it's like when people look at you and only see what they want to see." "I'm Vivian," she said, extending her hand before she could think better of it. He hesitated before taking it. Darius Lowe." "Thank you, Darius. Most people in there wouldn't have bothered." "I'm not most people." A slight smile softened his features. "And neither are you, I think." Something about his words made her stand a little taller. "No, I suppose I'm not." The hotel doorman approached them, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Carlyle, shall I call your driver?" Reality crashed back. She was standing outside a prestigious charity gala in a ruined dress, talking to a maintenance worker as if they were equals. "Yes, thank you," she said to the doorman before turning back to Darius. "I should go." Darius nodded, already taking a step back. "Take care, Miss Carlyle." "Vivian," she corrected him. "Just Vivian." He smiled again, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Good night, just Vivian." As he turned to walk away, Vivian felt a sudden panic. "Wait," Darius paused. She wasn't sure what she wanted to say, only that she didn't want him to disappear. "Do you work here often? At the hotel, I mean." "Most nights," he replied, looking curious about her question. "I might need to speak with the manager about tonight, to thank him for having such helpful staff," she improvised. "Perhaps I'll see you again." Something knowing flickered in his eyes. Perhaps. Her car arrived, and Vivian slipped into the back seat, her mind swirling with the night's events. As they pulled away, she looked back to see Darius still standing there, watching her leave. The next morning, Vivian woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. News traveled fast in Washington circles. "Have you seen the society page?" Melissa's voice came through the speaker. "You're everywhere." Vivian groaned and pulled up the article on her tablet. There it was, a photo of her with wine spilled down her dress and another of Darius escorting her out. The headline read, "Carlyle heiress rescued by hotel staff after Gala disaster." The article was everything she feared, thinly veiled mockery disguised as sympathy, with plenty of references to her broken engagement. Her mother called next. "Darling, I told you it was too soon to go out. The Harmons are furious. That maintenance person, so inappropriate. What were you thinking?" "He was helping me, Mother, when no one else would." "Well, it looks terrible. You need to lay low for a while. Come stay at the lake house until this blows over." "I'm not hiding," Vivian said firmly. "I did nothing wrong." After ending the call, she stared at the ceiling of her Georgetown apartment. For years, she'd molded herself to fit into the world she was born into. The perfect daughter, the perfect fiancée, until Bradley had decided she wasn't enough and left her for Kimberly, whose father owned half of Virginia. Darius's words echoed in her mind. "This doesn't define you." What did define her? She hardly knew anymore. 3 days later, Vivian found herself standing in the lobby of the Washington Grand Hotel, wondering if she'd lost her mind. She'd dressed casually, designer jeans and a simple blouse, and told herself she was just there to speak with the manager about the incident. But her eyes kept scanning for a particular maintenance uniform. "Miss Carlyle," the hotel manager hurried over, all smiles and concern. "What a pleasure to see you again. I was deeply disturbed to hear about the unfortunate incident at the gala. Please accept the hotel's sincere apologies." Actually, I wanted to thank your staff member, Darius Lowe. He was very kind that night. The manager's smile faltered slightly. Ah, yes, Lowe. Excellent worker. Been with us for about a year now. Is he working today? Vivian asked, trying to sound casual. I believe he's on the evening shift, starts at 4. The manager looked at his watch. That's in about an hour, actually. I see. Well, thank you. Vivian moved toward the hotel's cafe. I think I'll have some tea while I wait. Before I leave. The manager looked confused but nodded politely before excusing himself. Vivienne ordered tea and sat by the window, questioning her own sanity. What was she doing? Waiting around to thank a maintenance worker? Her mother would have a fit if she knew. At exactly 4 o'clock, Darius Wabay hiked through the staff entrance. He wore the same Navy uniform, but somehow he carried himself with more natural confidence than most of the politicians she knew. He didn't notice her at first, heading straight for the service elevator. Vivian stood up, her heart racing unexpectedly. Darius! He turned, surprise evident on his face when he spotted her. After a moment's hesitation, he walked over to her table. Miss Carlyle, he said formally, aware of the curious glances from hotel guests. Vivian, she corrected again. I wanted to thank you properly for your help the other night. Darius shifted uncomfortably. No need, just doing my job. No, you weren't. Your job is to clean floors, not rescue humiliated socialites. She smiled, trying to put him at ease. At least let me buy you a coffee. He glanced at his watch. I just started my shift. After then, when do you finish? Darius looked at her curiously, as if trying to figure her out. Midnight. Vivian hesitated. Meeting a virtual stranger at midnight wasn't the wisest idea. That's late. It is, he agreed, a hint of amusement in his eyes. But there's a diner across the street that's open 24 hours. Good coffee. Was he actually suggesting they meet? Vivian felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Anticipation. Midnight then, at the diner. Darius nodded once before returning to work, leaving Vivian wondering what she'd just set in motion. She spent the evening at home, changing outfits 3 times before settling on casual clothes again. This wasn't a date, she reminded herself, just a thank you coffee with someone who'd been kind to her. At 11:55 p.m. she entered the fluorescent-lit diner. It was nearly empty, save for a truck driver at the counter and 2 college students huddled over laptops. She chose a Bowoth by the window and waited, half expecting Darius not to show. At exactly midnight, the bell above the door jingled. Darius entered, now wearing jeans and a simple dark sweater instead of his uniform. He spotted her immediately and walked over. You came, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. So did you, she replied. A tired waitress brought them coffee without being asked, clearly familiar with Darius. Regular after work, huh? Vivienne, scared. Hard to sleep right after a shift, he explained. Need to wind down first. They fell into surprisingly easy conversation. She learned he was 28, had grown up in Baltimore, and had worked a variety of jobs since leaving the military 3 years ago. Why maintenance, she asked. It's honest work. No one bothers me. And at night, I can think. What do you think about? Darius studied her for a moment. Life, books, the future. He took a sip of coffee. What about you? What does Vivian Carlyle think about when no one's watching? The question caught her off guard. No one ever asked what she thought about. Lately, how quickly people can disappear from your life, how fragile everything is. Darius nodded, understanding in his eyes. Your fiancé? Vivienne winced. Ex-fiancé. News travels fast. Hard to miss when it's plastered across every newspaper in the break room. Great, she sighed. So you know all about poor, abandoned Vivian Carlyle. I know what they printed, Darius said carefully. Doesn't mean I know you. Something about his straightforward manner made Vivian want to be equally honest. Bradley left me because I wasn't exciting enough. That's the truth, no one prints. 5 years together, and in the end I was just boring. Is that what you believe? Darius asked. It doesn't matter what I believe. It's what hap Enid. It's the only thing that matters, he countered. What you believe about yourself. Vivienne stared at him. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, not this. She gestured between them. Not someone who makes me think. Darius smiled, that same genuine smile from the night of the gala. Maybe that's why you're here at midnight, having coffee with the maintenance guy. They talked until the sky began to lighten outside the diner windows. Vivienne couldn't remember the last time she'd spoken so freely with anyone. Darius listened in a way that made her feel heard, not just observed. When they finally parted ways outside the diner, Vivienne felt strangely reluctant to leave. Thank you for the coffee, Darius said, and the company. I was supposed to be thanking you, she reminded him. Consider us even, then. Vivienne hesitated. Will you be working tomorrow night? At the hotel? Every night this week. Maybe I'll have trouble sleeping tomorrow too, she said. Might need coffee again. Darius looked at her for a long moment. Midnight's a strange time for a woman like you to be meeting a man like me. A woman like me? Vivienne raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? You know what it means, Vivienne. We live in different worlds. And yet here we are, she said softly. Same diner, same coffee, same time. He didn't argue further. Good night, Vivienne. Until tomorrow, Darius. As her car drove her home in the early morning light, Vivienne realized she hadn't thought about Bradley or the humiliating Gala incident once during their entire conversation. For the first time in months, she'd just been herself, whoever that was. She didn't know what was happening, but something had started that night at the Gala when Darius had knelt before her. Something neither of the M had planned. And despite all logic and the social boundaries between them, Vivienne couldn't wait to see where it might lead. Their midnight meetings at the diner became a routine over the next 2 weeks. Each night, Vivienne would arrive a few minutes before Darius's shift ended, order 2 coffees and wait. And each night, they would talk until dawn about everything and nothing. Tonight, Vivienne arrived at the diner earlier than usual. The same tired waitress, Doris she now knew, greeted her with a knowing smile. Your regular booth is open, honey, she said, already pouring coffee. Thanks, Doris. How's your grandson doing with those math classes? Better, thanks to that tutor you recommended. Never thought I'd see the day Bobby would get excited about numbers. Vivienne smiled, warming at the simple connection she'd formed with the waitress. In her old life, was it only 2 weeks ago? She would never have learned the name of someone serving her, let alone details about their family. At midnight, the bell jingled, and Darius walked in. His face broke into a smile when he saw her, and Vivienne felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. You're early, he said, sliding into the booth. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. Mother hosted a dinner party tonight. You wouldn't believe the gossip still going around about the Gala incident. Darius frowned. They're still talking about that. Oh yes. Apparently I've now graduated from poor abandoned Vivienne to unstable Vivienne who might be having a breakdown. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. My mother cornered me before dessert to ask if I was seeing someone inappropriate. Darius raised an eyebrow. Are you? I don't know, Vivienne said honestly. Am I seeing you, Darius? The question hung between them. They'd spent hours together, shared St. Aure's and secrets, but neither had put a name to what was happening. I think, he said carefully, that would be a mistake. Vivienne felt a stab of disappointment. Why? Because I work maintenance at a hotel and you're a Carlisle. He stated it simply, as if reciting a fact everyone knew. Because your picture is in society magazines and mine is on an employee ID badge. I don't care about any of that, Vivienne insisted. You should, Darius replied. Your world doesn't make room for people like me except to clean up after them. His words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Maybe I don't want that world anymore. Darius leaned forward. Vivienne, you've known me for 2 weeks. That's not enough time to throw away a lifetime. I'm not throwing anything away, she argued. I'm just exploring something new. And what happens when you're done exploring? When reality sets in? The question silenced her. Was that all this was? An escape? A rebellion? "I should go," Darius said, standing up. "I have an early appointment tomorrow." "Wait." Vivian reached for his hand. "Don't leave like this. Please." Darius hesitated, then sat back down. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need you to be honest with yourself and with me." "I am being honest. When I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time in years." She took a deep breath. "Let me show you something. Tomorrow night. No diner, no hotel. Just a different place." Darius studied her face. "What place?" "Do you trust me?" she asked. After a long moment, he nodded. "Against my better judgment, yes." "Then meet me at the Lincoln Memorial at 8 p.m. tomorrow. I want to share something with you." The next evening, Vivian arrived at the Lincoln Memorial wearing jeans, a simple sweater and tennis shoes, an outfit her mother would have deemed suitable only for yard work. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. Darius was already waiting, leaning against a column, watching tourists take photos. He looked different outside the context of the hotel or diner, more relaxed, but also somehow more guarded. "You came," Vivian said, approaching him. "I said I would." He looked her up and down. "You look different. Good different or bad different?" "Just different. More," he searched for the word, "accessible." Vivian laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment. Come on, I want to show you something." She led him down the steps and along a path less traveled by tourists. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a small, unmarked building tucked behind some trees. "What is this place?" Darius asked. Vivienne pulled out a key. "My secret." Inside was a modest art studio. Canvases lined the walls, landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces, all showing talent, but with the rough edges of someone still developing their craft. "You painted these?" Darius asked, genuine surprise in his voice. Vivienne nodded, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "I've been painting since I was 12. My father encouraged it, said I had a gift. After he died, Mother called it a charming hobby and pushed me toward more suitable pursuits." Darius moved slowly around the room, studying each painting. "These are really good, Vivian." "They're amateur at best," she said, but his praise warmed her. "But they're mine. The only thing in my life that truly is." She walked to a canvas covered with a cloth. "I rent this space with money from a trust my father left me. No one knows about it. Not my mother, not my friends, not even Bradley knew." "Why show me?" Darius asked quietly. Vivienne pulled the cloth away to reveal a half-finished portrait of Darius at the diner, his face caught in a moment of laughter, the fluorescent lights creating a halo effect around him. "Because you're the first person who made me feel like being myself was enough," she said simply. Darius stared at the portrait, clearly stunned. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Vivian moved to stand beside him. "I just wanted you to see that there's more to me than the society page version, just like there's more to you than a hotel uniform." Slowly, Darius turned to face her. The distance between them seemed to shrink with each heartbeat. "Vivian," he whispered her name like a question. She answered by closing the gap between them. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered in the quiet of the studio. When they pulled apart, Darius kept his eyes closed for a moment, as if memorizing the feeling. "This complicates things," he said finally. "Life is complicated," Vivian replied, "but this us feels like the simplest thing in the world right now." They spent the evening in the studio, Vivian showing him her techniques, Darius sharing stories of places he'd seen during his military service that she could paint someday. It was the most natural thing in the world when their hands found each other, when they moved closer together on the old couch by the window. But as midnight approached, reality began to seep back in. "I should get you home," Darius said reluctantly. "Or we could stay here," Vivian suggested. "I've slept here before when I've worked late." Darius shook his head. "Not tonight. I need to think, and so do you." She didn't argue. Something had shifted between them, and they both needed time to process it. Outside her apartment building, Darius walked her to the door. Thank you for sharing your art with me. It means a lot. Will I see you tomorrow? Vivian asked. At the diner? Darius hesitated. I have the night off, but the day after, yes, I'll be there. One more kiss, lingering this time, and he was gone, leaving Vivian touching her lips and wondering how one maintenance worker had managed to turn her world upside down in just 2 weeks. The next morning, Vivian's doorbell rang at the ungodly hour of 7 a.m. Wrapping herself in a robe, she stumbled to the door to find her mother standing there, immaculately dressed as always. Mother, what are you doing here so early? Elizabeth Carlyle swept past her daughter into the apartment, her expression a mixture of concern and disapproval. We need to talk, Vivian. I've been patient, but this has gone far enough. Vivian's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Elizabeth pulled out her phone and showed Vivian a photo, clearly taken from a distance, of her and Darius kissing outside the art studio. Who sent you this? Vivian demanded, her voice shaking. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're throwing away everything your father and I built for you. For what? Some fling with a hotel janitor. He's not a janitor, he's a maintenance worker, and his name is Darius, Vivian said defensively. I don't care if his name is Prince Charming. This stops now. Elizabeth paced the room. Do you have any idea what people are saying? The Harmons are having a field day with this. Bradley's mother called me yesterday to express her concern about your well-being. Since when do you care what the Harmons think? Vivian asked. You never even liked them. This isn't about liking them, it's about your position in society, about the doors that will close if you continue this, whatever this is. Vivian took a deep breath. Mother, I'm 25 years old. I can make my own decisions about who I spend time with. Not if you want to remain a beneficiary of the family trust, Elizabeth said coldly. The words hung in the air like a physical threat. Vivian stared at her mother in disbelief. Are you threatening to cut me off because I'm seeing someone you don't approve of? I'm reminding you of your responsibilities, Elizabeth corrected. The trust has conditions. Your father may have been soft-hearted, but he wasn't stupid. There are morality clauses, behavior expectations. Dating a working man violates morality clauses. Vivian couldn't believe what she was hearing. Dating? Is that what you call it? Elizabeth's voice dripped with disdain. He's using you, Vivian. Men like that always are. He sees dollar signs when he looks at you. You don't know him, Vivian said, her anger rising. Darius is more honest and genuine than anyone in your social circle. Infatuation has clouded your judgment, Elizabeth sighed. I'm not cutting you off yet, but I am asking you to think very carefully about what you're doing. There's a board meeting for the Carlyle Foundation next week. You should be there looking like the future of this family, not sneaking around with hotel staff. Elizabeth walked to the door, then turned back. Your father would be disappointed, Vivian. He had such hopes for you. After her mother left, Vivian sat in stunned silence. The mention of her father hit her hardest. Would he really be disappointed, or would he have understood, as he had about her painting, that some passions couldn't be contained by social expectations? She tried to call Darius, forgetting he'd mentioned having the day off. His phone went straight to voicemail. Left alone with her thoughts, Vivian did something she hadn't done in years. She went to her art studio in broad daylight, not caring who might see her. The next night, Vivian arrived at the diner early again, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. She hadn't heard from Darius all day, and part of her feared he might not show up. But at midnight, the bell jingled, and there he was. One look at his face told her something was wrong. What happened? She asked as soon as he sat down. Darius rubbed his hands over his face, looking exhausted. I was called into the manager's office today. Someone complained about me, said I was fraternizing inappropriately with hotel guests. Vivian's heart sank. My mother. Doesn't matter who. What matters is I was given a warning. One more complaint, and I lose my job. He looked at her directly. I need this job, Vivian. I have rent to pay, bills that don't care about how I feel about you. This is my fault, Vivian said, reaching for his hand. I'll fix it. I'll talk to my mother, make her understand. There's nothing to understand, Darius interrupted. She sees exactly what this is. Two people from different worlds who have no business being together. That's not true, Vivian insisted. What we have is real. Is it? Darius pulled Hayes' hand away. Or am I just your rebellion against the life you were born into? Your way of getting back at Bradley and his new girlfriend? The accusation stung. How can you say that, after everything I've shared with you? Because I've seen this story before, Darius said quietly. Rich girl slums it with the working guy, gets it out of her system, then goes back to her real life. That's not fair. Vivian felt tears welling in her eyes. You're not being fair. Life isn't fair, Vivian. That's something people in my world learn early. Darius's voice softened. I care about you more than I should, but I won't be your rebellion. I need to be your truth, or I can't be anything at all. He stood up to leave. Vivian grabbed his arm. Don't walk away from this, from us. I'm not walking away, Darius said. I'm giving you space to figure out what you really want. Because it can't be both worlds, Vivian. Something has to give. After he left, Vivian sat alone in the diner booth, tears streaming down her face. Doris brought her a fresh cup of coffee and a box of tissues without a word. Men, Doris said finally, shaking her head. They think they're being noble when they're just being stubborn. Vivian managed a watery smile. Is it always this hard? The ones worth fighting for? Always. Doris patted her hand. But if it helps, I've seen the way that boy looks at you. He'll be back. 3 days passed with no sign of Darius. Vivian went to the diner each night at midnight, but he never showed. On the 4th day, she swallowed her pride and went to the hotel, only to be told by another maintenance worker that Darius had taken some personal days. Back at her apartment, Vivienne paced restlessly. The Carlyle Foundation board meeting was tomorrow. Her mother had called twice to remind her, each message more pointed than the last. Vivian stared at her closet full of designer clothes, her jewelry box filled with family heirlooms, her life of privilege spread out before her. Then she looked at the small painting of Darius she'd brought home from the studio, his eyes capturing the kindness and strength that had drawn her to him from the beginning. Why do you see me when no one else does? She whispered to the painting. The answer came to her in a flash of clarity, because he looked past the name, the money, the social standing. He saw Vivian, just Vivian. Making a decision, she picked up her phone and dialed. Mother, we need to talk. Tonight. And you're not going to like what I have to say. Elizabeth arrived at Vivian's apartment looking wary. This better be about the board meeting tomorrow. I've already told everyone you'll be there. I'm not going to the board meeting, Vivian said calmly. And I don't care about the trust fund. Elizabeth's face paled. You can't be serious. This is about that maintenance man, isn't it? His name is Darius, Vivian said for what felt like the 100th time. And yes, partly, but it's more about me, about who I want to be. And who is that? Elizabeth asked coldly. Someone who throws away generations of privilege for a fling? Someone who makes her own choices. Someone who values honesty over appearance. Vivian took a deep breath. Someone like Dad. The mention of her late husband seemed to deflate Elizabeth slightly. Your father was a good man, but even he understood the importance of position. Did he? Because I remember him teaching me that character matters more than credentials, that how you treat people defines you more than how they treat you. Vivian moved closer to her mother. I'm not asking for your blessing, I'm just asking you, T. Oh, stop interfering. Let me live my life, make my own mistakes if that's what they are. Elizabeth studied her daughter's face for a long moment. You really care about this man? I do, Vivian said simply. He makes me feel like myself. Something flickered in Elizabeth's eyes, recognition, perhaps, or memory. Your father used to say the same thing about me, you know, before we were married. The admission surprised Vivienne. Her parents' marriage had always seemed more practical than passionate. What do you mean? Elizabeth sighed, suddenly looking older. I wasn't always the society matron you see now. I was a secretary at your grandfather's company when your father first noticed me. His parents disapproved, of course. You never told me that, Vivian said, stunned. It wasn't relevant. We made it work. I adapted to his world. Elizabeth straightened her shoulders. But the difference is, your Faither had something to offer me. Security, position, a future. What does this Darius offer you, except a step down in the world? Acceptance, Vivian answered without hesitation, and the chance to be more than just a Carlyle. Elizabeth was quiet for a long time. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Your father wanted you to have this when you found someone who saw the real you. I thought that was Bradley, but I was wrong. She opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant sapphire ring, nothing like the flashy diamond Bradley had given her. This was my engagement ring, Elizabeth explained, before your grandfather insisted on something more appropriate for a Carlyle wife. Vivian took the box, speechless. I'm not saying I approve, Elizabeth clarified, but I am saying that I recognize that look in your eyes. It's the same one I had when I defied my parents to date your father. She moved toward the door. The board meeting is at noon tomorrow. Come or don't come, it's your choice. But whatever you decide, be sure it's what you really want, not just what feels good in the moment. After her mother left, Vivian sat holding the sapphire ring, turning it over in her fingers. The revelation about her parents' relationship had shaken her assumptions about her mother. With sudden determination, Vivian grabbed her car, keys. It was time to find Darius. Finding him proved harder than she expected. He wasn't at the hotel. The diner waitress hadn't seen him. Out of options, Vivian did something she'd never done before. She asked the hotel HR department for his address, claiming to have found his wallet. The sympathetic HR assistant, who had seen the tabloid photos and clearly believed in romance, gave Vivian an address in a modest neighborhood across town. Standing outside his apartment building, Vivian's courage nearly failed her. What if he didn't want to see her? What if he'd already moved on? Taking a deep breath, she pressed the buzzer for apartment 3B. No answer. She was about to leave when a voice behind her said, "Vivian?" Turning, she found Darius standing there with a bag of groceries, looking surprised and wary. "How did you find me?" "I may have lied to HR about finding your wallet," she admitted. Despite himself, Darius's mouth twitched with the ghost of a smile. "Breaking rules now? I'm a bad influence." "Can we talk?" Vivian asked. "Please." Darius hesitated, then nodded. "Come up." His apartment was small but neat. A studio with minimal furniture, bookshelves lining one wall, and surprisingly, an easel in the corner with a half-finished painting. "You paint?" Vivian asked, shocked. "Trying to learn," Darius admitted. "After seeing your studio, it inspired me to try again. I used to draw when I was younger." The knowledge that she had influenced him somehow made Vivian's heart swell. "Darius, I need to tell you something." He set down his groceries and turned to face her. "I'm listening." "You were right to question my motives," she began. "I did need to figure out what I really wanted, and I have." She told him about her conversation with her mother, about the revelation of her parents' relationship, about her decision regarding the board meeting. "I don't want to be defined by my family name anymore," she concluded. "I want to be defined by my choices, my actions, my art, by the people I choose to love." Darius listened without interrupting, his expression guarded. When she finished, he asked simply, "And what about your mother's threat? The trust fund?" "I don't care," Vivian said firmly. "I have my own money from my father. Not as much, but enough. And I have my art." "It's not that simple, Vivian," Darius warned. "Walking away from privilege never is." "I'm not walking away from anything," she countered. "I'm walking towards something. Toward you, if you'll have me." Darius moved closer, caution warring with hope in his eyes. "I won't be your rebellion," he repeated his words from the diner. "You're not," Vivian assured him. "You're my truth. The first real thing I've felt in years." Slowly, Darius reached out to touch her face. "Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Your world will close doors you can't even see yet." "Then we'll find new doors," Vivian said, leaning into his touch. "Together." The kiss that followed sealed a promise between them, to face whatever came next side by side. Later, curled together on his small couch, Vivian showed him the sapphire ring her mother had given her. "It's beautiful," Darius said, holding it up to the light. "Much more you than that rock Bradley gave you." Vivian laughed. "That's exactly what I thought." She grew serious. "It's not an expectation, you know. Just a reminder that sometimes love crosses boundaries." Darius pulled her closer. "One day at a time, Vivian. Let's not rush this." "One day at a time," she agreed, resting her head on his shoulder. Outside the window of his small apartment, Washington's lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth. In that moment, Vivian knew she had made the right choice. Whatever came next, her mother's disapproval, society's judgment, Bradley's mockery, none of it mattered as much as the feeling of finally being exactly where she belonged. But even as she drifted to sleep in Darius's arms, a shadow of doubt crept into her mind. Was love really enough to bridge their two worlds, or were they just postponing the inevitable collision? The next morning, Vivian woke up on Darius's couch with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She watched him in the tiny kitchen making coffee with his back to her and felt a wave of certainty wash over her. This was right. "Morning," she said, stretching as she sat up. Darius turned a soft smile on his face. "Morning. Sleep okay?" "That couch isn't exactly luxury accommodations." "Best sleep I've had in months," she answered honestly. He brought her a mug of coffee and sat beside her. "So what happens now?" Vivian checked her watch and grimaced. "Well, in 2 hours, the Carlisle Foundation board meeting starts. Mother will be expecting me to show up in my proper society girl costume." "And will you?" Darius asked, his tone careful. "In neutral." Vivian took a sip of coffee, considering. I think I need to go." Darius's face fell slightly, though he tried to hide it. "Not for the reasons you think," she added quickly. "If I'm really going to choose a different path, I need to face them. Tell them myself. Not hide away and let Mother make excuses for me." Darius studied her face. "That takes courage. Will you come with me?" The question surprised them both. "To a foundation board meeting?" Darius looked incredulous. "Vivian, that's not a good idea." "Maybe not," she admitted. "But I'm tired of hiding what matters to me. If I'm going to stand up to them, I want you beside me." Darius set down his coffee and took her hands in his. "Are you sure? This isn't just about making a statement. These are people with power, people who could make life difficult for both of us." "I'm sure," Vivian said firmly, "but I understand if it's too much to ask." Darius was quiet for a long moment, then squeezed her hands. "What time do we need to leave?" The Carlisle Foundation headquarters occupied the top floor of a prestigious office building downtown. Vivian and Darius arrived 15 minutes before the meeting was scheduled to begin. She had gone home to change, opting for a simple but elegant blue dress that matched the sapphire ring now on her right hand. Darius wore the only suit he owned, a navy blue one he kept for job interviews. In the elevator, Vivian reached for his hand. "Ready?" "No," he admitted with a nervous laugh. "But let's do it anyway." The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw Vivian walk in, holding hands with a man who was definitely not Bradley Harmon. "Miss Carlisle, your mother is already in the boardroom with the others." "Thank you, Janet. This is Darius Lowe. He's my guest today." Janet's gaze flicked between them, recognition dawning in her eyes. The tabloid photos had made the rounds. "Of course. Shall I announce you both?" "No need," Vivian said with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I know the way." As they approached the boardroom, voices drifted through the partially open door. "Completely irresponsible," a man was saying. "Charles would be appalled." "Now, Henry, let's not jump to conclusions," Elizabeth Carlisle's voice replied. "Vivian is going G through a phase. We all did at her age." "Your phase didn't end up splashed across the society pages," another voice chimed in. "The Harmons are telling everyone she's having some sort of breakdown." Vivian's steps faltered. Darius squeezed her hand. "We don't have to do this," he whispered. "Not like this." Vivian took a deep breath. "Yes, we do." She pushed open the door. 8 heads turned simultaneously as she entered with Darius at her side. "H." A mother's face paled, then flushed with color. Vivian, Elizabeth said, recovering quickly, we were just about to start, and you've brought a guest. The room was silent, all eyes moving between Vivian, Darius, and their clasped hands. Yes, Vivian said clearly, this is Darius Lowe. Darius, this is the Carlyle Foundation Board. No one moved to greet him. Henry Blackwell, her father's oldest friend and the foundation's chairman, cleared his throat. This is a closed meeting, Vivian. Family and board members only. Darius is important to me, Vivian said simply. I wanted you all to meet him. Elizabeth stood up. Perhaps we could have this discussion privately, before the meeting officially begins. No, Mother. I think everything that needs to be said can be said here. Vivian looked around the table at the familiar faces, people who had known her since childhood, who had attended her graduations, her engagement party, who had sent flowers when her father died. I know you've all heard the rumors. Yes, Darius and I are together. No, it's not a phase or a breakdown or a rebellion. It's the first real choice I've made for myself in years. Vivian, please, Elizabeth's voice held a warning. Think about what you're doing. I have thought about it, Vivian replied. I've thought about nothing else for weeks, and I've decided that I see and keep living my life to please everyone but myself. Henry Blackwell frowned. No one is asking you to do that, my dear, but there are expectations that come with the Carlyle name, responsibilities. I understand that, Vivian said, and I'm not walking away from the foundation or my father's legacy, but I am walking away from the idea that who I love has to fit some predetermined criteria. Darius, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Mr. Blackwell, Mrs. Carlyle, board members, I know this is unexpected. I know I'm not what any of you would have chosen for Vivian, but I care about her deeply, and I promise you I have only her best interests at heart. Young man, Henry said, his tone condescending, do you have any idea what you're stepping into? The Carlyle name comes with scrutiny, with pressure. Are you prepared for that? No, sir, Darius answered honestly, but I'm prepared to try, F or her. One of the older board members, Margaret Wilson, who had rarely spoken at meetings in Vivian's memory, suddenly laughed. Well, I think he's refreshing. Reminds me of Charles when he was young, before all this. She gestured around the fancy boardroom. Elizabeth shot Margaret a betrayed look. This isn't about being refreshing, says Margaret. This is about Vivian's future. Exactly, Vivian agreed. My future. Which is why I'm here today to tell you all that I'm stepping back from my active role in the foundation, temporarily. A collective gasp went around the table. I'm not abandoning it, she clarified quickly. But I need time to figure out who I am outside of the Carlyle name. I want to focus on my art, on building a life that feels authentic. Your art? Henry looked confused. What art? Elizabeth sighed. Vivian paints. Has since she was a child. Charles encouraged it. The revelation that her mother had known about her secret passion all along stunned Vivian momentarily. Yes, she recovered. I paint. I'm actually quite good, and I've decided to pursue it professionally. I've already spoken with a gallery owner about displaying some of my work. This, at least, was news to her mother, whose eyebrows shot up in surprise. I see, Henry said slowly. And what role do you envision for yourself in the foundation going forward? I'd like to establish an arts program, Vivian said, the idea forming as she spoke. For underprivileged children, art helped me find myself. Maybe it could help others too. The board members exchanged glances, some thoughtful, others clearly disapproving. We'll need to discuss this, Henry said finally. As for today's meeting, we'll go, Vivian said, understanding the dismissal. But I meant what I said. I'm not abandoning my responsibilities, just redefining them. As they turned to leave, Elizabeth stood. Vivienne, wait. A word in private, please. Vivienne hesitated, then nodded to Darius. I'll meet you by the elevator. When they were alone in Elizabeth's office, mother and daughter faced each other in tense silence. Was that really necessary? Elizabeth asked finally. Bringing him here, making a scene? It wasn't a scene, Mother. It was the truth. Something this family could use more of. Elizabeth sank into her chair, suddenly looking tired. You have no idea the work it took. the sacrifices your father and I made to build this life for you." "I know," Vivian said, softening slightly. "And I'm grateful. But that doesn't mean I have to live exactly the life you planned. And this man, Darius, you believe he loves you? Not your name? Not your money?" "Yes," Vivian said without hesitation. "He's tried to push me away more than once, worry. Die about exactly what you're suggesting." Elizabeth studied her daughter's face for a long moment. "You're wearing my ring," she observed, nodding at the sapphire. "It felt right," Vivian said, touching it. "More me than Bradley's diamond ever did." A ghost of a smile touched Elizabeth's lips. "I thought the same thing when your father gave it to me. His mother was horrified, said it wasn't grand enough for a Carlisle bride. Yet you kept it all these years." "Yes." Elizabeth's gaze drifted to a photo on her desk, a younger version of herself and Charles Carlisle on their wedding day. "Because it reminded me of who we were before in everything." She looked back at Vivian. "I won't pretend to approve of this relationship, but I also won't stand in your way. Your trust fund remains intact. That was always between you and your father." "Thank you," Vivian said, genuinely surprised. "That means a lot." "Don't thank me yet," Elizabeth warned. "Society has a long memory, Vivian. Doors will close. People will talk." "Let them," Vivian said, straightening her shoulders. "I have better things to listen to." In the weeks that followed, Vivian's life transformed in ways both expected and surprising. As her mother predicted, invitations to society events dwindled. The Harmons made sure everyone knew about her scandalous affair with the Help. Former friends CR off the street to avoid awkward encounters. But for every door that closed, it seemed another opened. The owner of a small gallery in a trendy neighborhood agreed to display several of her paintings. To Vivian's shock, 3 sold on opening night, and not to family friends feeling sorry for her, but to genuine art lovers who connected with her work. She and Darius settled into a comfortable routine. Some nights she stayed at his small apartment. Other nights he stayed at hers. They had their first real fight when she offered to help him with rent. "I'm not a charity case, Vivienne, and made up under the stars on the National Mall. I know you're not. I just want to share what I have with the person I love." Doris at the diner still saved their booth, though they now came earlier in the evening rather than at midnight. She was their biggest champion, telling any customer who would listen about her lovely birds who crossed the tracks for each other. On a crisp autumn evening, Vivian sat across from Darius at a small Italian restaurant he'd discovered. It wasn't fancy, no white tablecloths or sommelier, but the food was incredible, and the owner greeted them like family. "I have news," Vivian said, unable to contain her excitement any longer. "The gallery sold my last painting today. That's 5 in total." "That's amazing!" Darius reached across the tableau to squeeze her hand. "I told you people would recognize your talent." "And I have you to thank," she said softly. "If you hadn't come into my life, I might never have found the courage to show my work." Darius shook his head. "The courage was always there. You just needed a reason to find it." Their dinner was interrupted when a familiar figure appeared beside their table. Bradley Harmon stood there, looking uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit. "Vivian," he nodded stiffly. "I thought that was you." Darius tensed, his hand tightening around hers. "Bradley?" Vivian said coolly. "What a surprise." Bradley's gaze flicked to Darius, then back to her. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" "Anything you have to say can be said in front of Darius," Vivian replied. Bradley shifted his weight. "Fine. I wanted to apologize for how things ended between us, and for Kimberly's behavior at the gala. It was unacceptable." Vivian studied her ex-fiancé's face, looking for the man she'd once thought she'd spent her life with. All she saw was a stranger in expensive clothes. "Thank you for the apology," she said finally. "Is that all?" Bradley hesitated. "My father mentioned you're no longer active with the Carlisle Foundation, that you're painting now." "That's right." "And you two are—" He gestured between her and Darius. "Together," Vivian confirmed. "Very much so." Bradley nodded slowly. "I see. Well, I should let you get back to your dinner." "Good to see you, Vivian. You look happy." "I am," she said simply. After he left, Darius let out a breath. Well, that was unexpected. Vivian laughed. The strangest part, 3 months ago, running into Bradley would have ruined my entire week. Now it's just nothing. Nothing? Darius raised an eyebrow. Well, maybe not nothing, she amended. It's nice to know I made the right choice, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Later that night, as they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets, Darius grew uncharacteristically quiet. What's on your mind? Vivian asked, bumping his shoulder gently with hers. I got a job offer today, he said finally. A good one. That's wonderful, Vivian exclaimed. Where? Doing what? The Veterans Center on Maple Street. They need a facilities manager. Better hours, better pay, benefits. He hesitated. But it would mean leaving the hotel. I don't understand the problem, Vivian said, confused by his serious tone. It sounds perfect. Darius stopped walking and turned to face her. The problem is, I'm not sure I deserve it. The director is a former military buddy. He knows about us, about you. What if he only offered me the job because of your name, your connections? Vivian felt a flare of frustration. Darius, you were in the military for 6 years. You have experience managing facilities. Why wouldn't you deserve this job? Because nothing has been the same since I met you, he said, his voice tight. Suddenly doors are opening that were closed before, and I can't help but wonder if it's because of me or because of who you are. Does it matter? Vivian asked. If it's a job you want, a job you're qualified for? It matters to me, Darius said firmly. I need to know I earned it, that I'm not just riding your coattails. Vivian took a deep breath, trying to understand. Okay, then ask your friend directly. If he says it's because of me, turn it down. But if he says it's because you're the right person for the job, promise me you'll take it. Darius studied her face in the moonlight. You make everything sound so simple. Maybe it is, she said softly. Maybe we're the ones who complicate things. When they reached her apartment, Darius pulled her close. I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you weeks ago. Vivian felt a flicker of fear. What is it? The night we met at the gala. It wasn't a coincidence that I was there. What do you mean? Vivian pulled back slightly to see his face. Darius took a deep breath. I wasn't supposed to be working that ballroom. I switched shifts with another guy because I knew you would be there. Vivian stared at him, confused. How could you have known we'd never met? No, but I'd seen you before. At a fundraiser for veterans last year. You were with Bradley, but you seemed sad. You stood by yourself near a painting while everyone else networked. You looked at that painting like it was speaking to you. I remember that painting, Vivian said softly. It was by a veteran who lost both legs. In Afghanistan. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. I painted it, Darius said quietly. Vivian's eyes widened. What? You're J.D. Lewis? But why didn't you tell me? J.D. are my first and middle initials, Jarius Darius. Lewis was my mother's maiden name. I used it for my art because, I don't know, it felt separate from my military service, from my regular life. But why keep it from me? Vivian pressed. Especially after I showed you my studio. Darius ran a hand through his hair. At first it felt like too much of a coincidence, like you might think I'd sought you out on purpose. Then, after we got closer, I was afraid you'd think I'd been lying to you. Which you kind of were, Vivian pointed out, hurt creeping into her voice. Not about anything important, Darius insisted. Not about how I feel about you. But yes, I should have told you sooner. I'm telling you now because I don't want any secrets between us. Vivian processed this revelation. So at the gala, when you helped me, I recognized you. I'd been watching you all night, trying to work up the courage to say something, anything. Then when that woman spilled wine on your dress, it was like fate handed me an opening. All this time I thought our meeting was just chance, Vivian said slowly. The meeting might not have been, Darius acknowledged, but everything the tea happened after. That was real, Vivian, every moment. She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. All she saw was the same open, honest expression that had drawn her to him from the beginning. J.D. Lewis, she repeated. Your painting sold for $12,000 at that auction. Darius smiled sheepishly. 13,000 actually. It paid for my first year of art classes and a lot of supplies. A laugh bubbled up from Vivian's chest. All this time, I thought I was the artist in this relationship. You are, Darius assured her. I just dabble. You have real talent, Vivian. She touched his face gently. So do you, in more ways than one. That night, as they lay together in her bed, Vivian felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced before. The revelation about Darius's art, far from creating distance between them, had somehow brought them closer. Another thread binding their souls together. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. It was the first time either of them had said the words aloud. Darius pulled her closer. I love you too. Have since that night at the Veterans Fundraiser, I think. Even when I was with Bradley, she teased. Even then, he admitted. Though I never thought I'd have a chance. Girls like you don't end up with guys like me. Good thing I'm not girls like me anymore, Vivian murmured. Ed sleepily. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Darius took the job at the Veterans Center after confirming with his friend that the offer was based on his qualifications, not his relationship with Vivian. He moved into her apartment, just temporarily, he insisted, though they both knew there was nothing temporary about their feelings. Vivian launched a small art therapy program through the Carlyle Foundation, working with veterans at the same center where Darius now worked. To her surprise, her mother attended the opening ceremony, maintaining a polite distance, but offering a nod of acknowledgement when Vivian caught her eye. The society pages had long since moved on to fresher scandals, though occasionally Vivian would catch a glimpse of her name in an article about Washington's most surprising couples. Bradley and Kimberly announced their engagement in the Sunday paper, and Vivian was surprised to find she felt nothing but a vague wish for their happiness. Life settled into a new normal, one filled with paint-stained fingers, late-night conversations, and a depth of connection Vivian had never imagined possible. For the first time in her life, she felt fully seen and accepted for exactly who she was. We should celebrate, Darius said one evening as they walked home from dinner. It's been exactly 3 months since the gala. Has it really? Vivian smiled at the memory that once brought humiliation, but now felt like the beginning of something precious. What did you have in mind? I might have secured an invitation to a certain charity event, Darius said with a mischievous grin. The Children's Hospital Autumn Ball? Vivian stopped walking. The same event? Where we met? The very same. Darius looked suddenly uncertain. Too much? We don't have to go if you don't want to. No, Vivian said slowly, a smile spreading across her face. It's perfect. But how did you get tickets? They're usually reserved for major donors. Let's just say your mother isn't the only one who can pull strings, Darius said cryptically. So, will you be my date to the ball, Vivian Carlyle? Absolutely, she said, kissing him, but no white dress this time. I'm thinking red. The night of the ball arrived and Vivian felt none of the anxiety that had plagued her 3 months earlier. Her red gown was elegant but bold, a statement rather than an attempt to blend in. Darius looked handsome in a proper tuxedo he'd splurged on, despite her insistence that he could use her credit card. Ready to make an entrance? He asked as their car pulled up to the hotel. With you? Always. They walked into the ballroom hand in hand, heads held high. The same chandeliers sparkled overhead, the same orchestra played softly in the corner, but everything else felt different. Vivian was different. Heads turned, whispers followed. But this time Vivian welcomed the attention. Let them see. Let them all see what real happiness looked like. To her surprise, many of the same people who had shunned her weeks earlier now approached with warm greetings, as if her relationship with Darius had been sanctioned by the mere passage of time. Vultures, Darius muttered, after a particularly effusive greeting from a woman who had once crossed the street to avoid Vivian. Sheep, Vivian corrected with a laugh. They just follow whoever seems to be leading at the moment. As the evening progressed, Vivian found herself actually enjoying the event. Without the pressure to impress or conform, she was free to be herself, to laugh too loudly, to ignore tedious conversations, to keep her hand firmly in Darius's. "Dance with me?" Darius asked as the orchestra began a waltz. "I thought you didn't dance," Vivian teased, recalling one of their early conversations. "I've been practicing," he admitted. "YouTube tutorials." Vivian's heart swelled at the thought of him secretly learning to waltz for her. "In that case, how can I refuse?" As they moved onto the dance floor, the crowd seemed to part, all eyes on the unlikely couple. Darius led confidently, if not perfectly, and Vivienne followed, their bodies in sync, just as their hearts were. "They're all watching us," Darius murmured. "Let them," Vivienne replied. "Maybe they'll learn something." As the music swelled, Vivienne felt a contentment so complete it almost hurt. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not the careful arrangement she'd had with Bradley, but this wild, unexpected joy that defied logic and social boundaries. But even as Darius spun her under the chandeliers, a shadow fell across their perfect moment. A man Vivienne didn't recognize approached the edge of the dance floor, his eyes fixed on Darius with an intensity that made her nervous. Darius hadn't seen him yet, his attention fully on Vivienne and the steps of the dance. But as they turned, his body suddenly tensed, his rhythm faltering. "Darius?" Vivienne asked, concerned. "What's wrong?" The stranger moved closer, his expression unreadable. When the music ended, he stepped forward, inserted himself smoothly between couples and extended his hand to Darius. "Jarius," the man said, his voice carrying a hint of an accent Vivienne couldn't place. "It's been a long time." Darius's face had drained of color. "Marcus." The man, Marcus, turned to Vivienne with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And you must be the famous Vivienne Carlyle. I've heard so much about you." "I wish I could say the same," Vivienne replied cautiously. Marcus leaned in, his lips close to her ear as he whispered, "Has he told you about Afghanistan? About what he did to my sister?" Vivienne's hand slipped from Darius's as she stepped back, confusion and alarm washing over her. "What?" "Don't listen to him, Vivienne," Darius said urgently, reaching for her hand again, but Marcus wasn't finished. "Has he told you why he really left the military? Why he hides behind a different name for his art?" Around them, other dancers continued their waltzes, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. But for Vivienne, the music had faded to a distant hum, drowned out by the roaring in her ears. "Darius?" she whispered, searching his face for answers. "What is he talking about?" Darius' expression was a mixture of anger and fear, an expression she'd never seen on his face before. "Vivienne, please. Not here. Let me explain." But Marcus cut in again. "He won't explain, he'll just disappear again. That's what he does. Isn't it, Jarius?" Darius lunged toward Marcus, only stopping himself at the last moment. "You have no right to be here," he hissed. "No right to interfere in my life." "I have every right," Marcus replied coldly. "After what you did, I have every right in the world." Vivienne stood frozen between the two men, her perfect evening shattered by words she didn't understand, but that clear orally carried the weight of a painful history. "Darius?" she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Who is this man? What is he talking about?" Darius looked at her, his eyes pleading. "It's complicated, Vivienne. From before I knew you. From Afghanistan." "Tell her," Marcus challenged. "Tell her about Nadia. Tell her what kind of man you really are." The name Nadia seemed to physically wound Darius. He flinched as if struck. "Vivienne," he began, his voice hoarse. "I need you to trust me, please." But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. For the first time since they'd met, Vivienne looked at Darius and saw a stranger, a man with secrets dark enough to follow him across oceans and years. "I think," she said slowly, "I need some air." Without waiting for either man to respond, she turned and walked away, her red dress aflame cutting through the sea of black tuxedos and pastel gowns. Behind her, she could hear Darius calling her name, but she kept walking. Outside in the cool night air, just like 3 months before, Vivienne tried to make sense of what had just happened. Who was Marcus? Who was Nadia? And most importantly, who was Darius, or Jarius really? She had thought she knew him, thought they had no secrets between them. But the look on his face when he saw Marcus told a different story, one she was not sure she was ready to hear. Vivienne stood on the hotel's terrace, her arms wrapped around herself despite the mild evening. Her mind raced with questions, each one more troubling than the last. Who was Marcus? What had happened in Afghanistan? And why did Darius look so haunted? Vivienne. She turned to find Darius standing a few feet away, his face etched with worry. "Don't run from me," he pleaded. "Not until you hear the truth." "And what is the truth?" Vivienne asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Because right now, I'm not sure I know who you are." Darius took a step closer. "I'm the same man I've always been. The same man who helped you that night, who shared midnight coffee with you, who fell in love with you." "But you're also someone else," Vivienne said. "Someone with secrets. Someone named Jarius who did something in Afghanistan that made that man hate you." Darius closed his eyes briefly. "Yes." The simple admission hung in the air between them. "Tell me," Vivienne demanded. "All of it." Darius glanced back toward the ballroom doors. "Not here. Can we go somewhere private?" Part of Vivienne wanted to refuse, to demand answers right here and now, but the larger part remembered all the moments they'd shared, all the trust they'd built. She nodded. "The garden," she suggested, pointing to the hotel's small but elegant garden area, now empty of guests. They walked in silence to a secluded bench beneath a flowering tree. The sounds of the gala were muffled here, the night wrapping around them like a protective cloak. Darius sat beside her, his hands clasped tightly together. "My full name is Jarius Darius Lowe. When I enlisted, everyone called me J.D. It stuck. And the art, J.D. Lewis. My mother's maiden name," he confirmed. "I started painting in Afghanistan. It helped, with everything we saw there." Vivienne waited, sensing he was working his way toward the harder truth. "I was stationed in Kandahar, part of a unit providing security for a medical outpost," Darius continued. "That's where I met Nadia. She was an interpreter, working with the local doctors. Smart, brave, beautiful." A knot formed in Vivienne's stomach. "You were in love with her?" Darius nodded slowly. "We kept it quiet. Relationships with locals were complicated. But yes, I loved her. And Marcus, is he her husband? Brother?" "Brother," Darius confirmed. "He worked as a driver for our unit. That's how Nadia and I met." Darius fell silent, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the garden walls. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. "There was an attack. Intelligence suggested the Taliban was targeting the medical outpost. We were evacuating everyone." His hands were shaking now. "I told Nadia to wait for me at the extraction point. I hate she had to help secure the area first." Vivienne's heart raced, afraid of where this story was heading. "The attack came earlier than expected. From a different direction. I tried to get back to her." Darius's voice broke. "I was too late. The building she was in, it was hit hard." "Oh, Darius," Vivienne whispered, instinctively reaching for his hand. "Marcus blamed me," Darius continued. "Said if I hadn't gotten involved with his sister, she would have left with the first evacuation group. Said I promised to protect her and failed." "But it wasn't your fault," Vivienne insisted. "You couldn't have known." "Couldn't I?" Darius looked at her, his eyes filled with a pain so raw it took her breath away. "I was security. I should have insisted she leave first. Should have made sure she was safe before anything else." "You were in a war zone," Vivienne said gently. "You were doing your job." "That's what my commanding officer said during the inquiry. But it didn't bring Nadia back." Darius wiped a hand across his face. "After that, I couldn't stay. I finished my tour and left the military. Changed the name I used for my art. Tried to move on." "And Marcus? How did he find you tonight?" "I don't know," Darius admitted. "I haven't seen him since I left Afghanistan. He was still there, working with a different unit. Must have come back to the States. Maybe he saw the articles about us. Recognized me." Vivienne processed everything he'd told her. It was tragic, heartbreaking, but not the dark secret she'd feared. "Why didn't you tell me about her?" she asked softly. "About what happened?" Darius looked down at their joined hands. At first it was too new between us. Then as we got closer, I was afraid. Of what? That you'd see me differently. That you'd look at me and see a man who couldn't protect the woman he loved. His voice dropped to a whisper. That you'd wonder if I'd fail you too. The vulnerability in his admission broke Vivian's heart. This strong, steady man who had been her rock for months had been carrying this burden all along. "Darius," she said firmly, turning to face him fully, "what happened to Nadia was a tragedy. But it wasn't your fault, and it doesn't change how I see you or how I feel about you." Hope flickered across his face. "Really? Really," she confirmed. "But I need you to promise me something." "Anything?" "No more secrets," Vivian said. "Not between us. Whatever happened before, good or bad, we face it together." Darius nodded solemnly. "No more secrets." Vivian leaned forward and kissed him gently. "Now, I think you need to talk to Marcus." Darius tensed. "Vivian, I don't think he came here for a reason," she insisted. "After all these years, maybe he needs closure as much as you do. What if he makes a scene? This is your world. These are your people." "Our people," Vivian corrected him. "And I don't care what they think. I care about you healing an old wound." After a moment's hesitation, Darius nodded. They returned to the ballroom to find Marcus standing alone near the bar, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He watched their approach with wary eyes. "I thought you'd run away. Again." "I'm not running anymore, Marcus," Darius said quietly. "I'm sorry about Nadia. I've been sorry every day since it happened." Marcus's expression remained hard. "Sorry doesn't bring her back." "No, it doesn't," Darius agreed. "Nothing will. But hating me won't bring her back either." "You promised to protect her," Marcus said, his accent thickening with emotion. "You promised our family." "I know," Darius acknowledged. "And I failed. I have to live with that. But Nadia made her own choices too. She knew the risks." "She stayed because of you," Marcus accused. "She stayed because she believed in what she was doing," Darius countered gently. "Because she was brave. She was helping people, Marcus. That's who she was." Something in Marcus's expression shifted, a crack in the armor of anger he'd worn for so long. "How did you find me?" Darius asked. "I saw your picture in a magazine with her." Marcus nodded toward Vivian. "You looked happy. It made me angry. Why should you be happy when Nadia is gone?" "I ask myself that same question," Darius admitted. "Every day." Vivian stepped forward. "Mr. Marcus, I didn't know Nadia, but from what Darius has told me, she sounds like an extraordinary woman. I'm sorry for your loss." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "You loathe him?" "Very much," Vivian answered without hesitation. "Then you should know what he is capable of," Marcus said, but the venom had left his voice. "How he can just disappear when things get hard." "That was a different man," Vivian said firmly. "People change. They grow. They learn to face their past instead of running from it." Marcus emptied his glass and set it on a nearby table. "Perhaps, but some wounds never heal." "No," Darius agreed, "but we learn to live with them, to carry them with honor instead of shame." An uncomfortable silence fell between the three of them. Finally, Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. "She would have turned 30 last month," he said, handing the photo to Darius. "You should have this to remember." The photo showed a young woman with striking dark eyes and a determined smile, wearing medical scrubs against a backdrop of desert mountains. "Thank you," Darius said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never forgotten her face, but it's good to see her again." Marcus nodded once, then turned to leave. "I won't bother you again. I just needed to see for myself." "Marcus," Darius called after him, "if you ever want to talk about her, about the good times, I'm here." "Perhaps someday," Marcus replied, not turning back. "But not today." They watched him weave through the crowded baller and disappear through the main doors. "Are you okay?" Vivian asked, squeezing Darius's hand. I will be, he said honestly. Seeing him again, it brought everything back. But maybe it needed to. Vivian noticed several curious onlookers watching them. Do you want to leave? We can go home. Darius looked around the ballroom, at the opulent decorations, the wealthy guests, the world that had once seemed so far removed from his own. Then he looked at Vivian, radiant in her red dress, standing beside him despite everything. No, he said, surprising her. I think we should dance. Are you sure? Completely. Darius tucked the photograph carefully into his jacket pocket, then held out his hand. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly who I'm supposed to be with. Vivian took his hand and together they returned to the dance floor. The orchestra was playing a slow, romantic melody. Darius pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. You know, Vivian said as they swayed to the music, when I came to that first gala 3 months ago, I was trying to prove I could stand on my own without Bradley. And now? Darius asked. Now I know I can stand on my own, she said softly. I just don't want to. I'd rather stand with you. Darius's eyes shone with emotion. Even knowing everything, my past, my failures? A special lie knowing those things, Vivian assured him. They're part of what made you the man I fell in love with. As they danced, Vivian became aware of a subtle shift in the atmosphere. People were watching them, but not with the scandalized whispers of before. There was something different in their gazes now, a mixture of curiosity and perhaps a touch of envy. Elizabeth Carlyle stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching her daughter with an unreadable expression. When Vivian caught her eye, Elizabeth gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before turning away. Your mother's here, Darius observed. Yes, Vivian confirmed, and I think she's finally beginning to understand. Understand what? That some traditions are meant to be broken, Vivian said, that sometimes the most unexpected choices bring the greatest joy. The music swelled around them, and Darius spun her in a graceful turn that would have been impossible 3 months ago. When she came back into his arms, he held her closer than before. I love you, Vivian Carlyle, he whispered against her ear. Every complicated, stubborn, beautiful part of you. And I love you, Darius Lowe, she replied, using his full name for the first time. Past, present, and future. 6 months later, Vivian stood in her art studio, putting the finishing touches on a new painting. The space had changed, expanded to include a corner for Darius's work as well. Their styles were different but complementary, just like the artists themselves. The bell above the door jingled as Darius entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. How's it coming? He asked, setting a cup beside her. Almost finished, Vivian said, stepping back to assess her work. What do you think? The painting showed a maintenance worker kneeling before a woman in a white dress, hotel chandeliers sparkling overhead. But unlike the real scene it depicted, the painting showed light emanating not from the chandeliers, but from the 2 figures themselves, illuminating each other amid the darkness of the watching crowd. It's perfect, Darius said, his arm slipping around her waist. What are you calling it? Vivian smiled, leaning into him. The man beneath the light. Fitting, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Though I might so, could guessed the beginning instead. The beginning of what? Vivian asked. In answer, Darius reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not unlike the one her mother had given her months ago, but newer. The beginning of the rest of our story, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. The band was silver, set with a small sapphire that perfectly matched the one she still wore on her right hand. Darius, Vivian breathed, her heart racing. He took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm not asking you to leave your world or join mine. I'm asking if you'll help me build a new one, together, where names and backgrounds don't matter, only the love we have for each other. Tears filled Vivian's eyes. Is this a proposal? The most important one I'll ever make, Darius confirmed. Vivian Carlyle, will you marry me? Not because it's expected or proper, but because when I'm with you, I'm the best version of myself. Yes, Vivian said without hesitation, 1,000 times, yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Vivienne thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a wine-stained dress to a declaration of forever, how quickly life could change when you were brave enough to follow your heart. "What are you thinking about?" Darius asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "About how grateful I am for red wine on white dresses," Vivienne said with a laugh, "and for maintenance workers who see beyond appearances." "I saw you," Darius said simply. "Just you." "And that," Vivienne replied, "made all the difference." Outside the studio window, Washington continued its relentless pace. Somewhere, Bradley and Kimberly were planning their society wedding. Elizabeth Carlyle was presiding over another charity board meeting. The world they had once navigated so carefully spun on without them. But inside this sun-drenched space, surrounded by the art they created together, Vivienne and Darius had found something far more precious than social standing or family connections. They had found truth. They had found home. And as they sealed their engagement with a kiss, Vivienne knew that no ballroom, no mansion, no place in high society could ever compare to the joy of being truly seen and deeply loved by the MIC and beneath the light. 1 year later, the Washington Grand Hotel's ballroom was transformed for a very different kind of event. Gone were the stiff formal tables and traditional floral arrangements. Instead, the space bloomed with vibrant colors and eclectic decor, a perfect reflection of the couple being celebrated. Vivienne stood at the entrance, not in white or red, but in a stunning blue gown that matched her sapphire rings, both the one from her mother and the one from her new husband. Beside her, Darius wore a charcoal suit with a blue tie that complemented her dress. "Ready to make our grand entrance, Mrs. Lowe?" he asked, squeezing her hand. "Carlyle Lowe," she corrected with a smile. "And absolutely." The doors opened, and they stepped into their wedding reception to thunderous applause. The guest list was an unlikely mixture. Society figures standing alongside veterans from the center, maintenance W orcas from the hotel chatting with art gallery owners, Elizabeth Carlyle making polite conversation with Doris from the diner. Two worlds merged into one. Vivienne's gaze swept the room, taking in the gallery of her artwork displayed along one wall, Darius's paintings on the other, including the one of Nadia that he had finally completed as a tribute to her memory. Among the guests, Vivienne spotted Marcus, who had accepted their invitation after months of cautious communication with Darius. He stood apart from the crowd, but he was there, a bridge to the past that no longer threatened their future. "I still can't believe we pulled this off," Darius murmured as they made their way through well-wishers. "Which part?" Vivienne asked. "Getting married or getting my mother to dance with your army sergeant?" Darius laughed, nodding toward Elizabeth, who was indeed engaged in what appeared to be a lively conversation with his former commanding officer. "Both," he admitted. "When I first met you, I never imagined we'd end up here." "No?" Vivienne raised an eyebrow. "Even though you sought me out at that gala?" "I sought out a beautiful woman who looked sad," Darius clarified. "I found the love of my life." As they reached the center of the ballroom, the music changed to the same waltz that had been playing the night Marcus had interrupted their dance. "I believe W. You have some unfinished business," Darius said, extending his hand with a formal bow. Vivienne curtsied playfully. "Indeed we do, Mr. Lowe." They moved together with the practiced ease of two people who had learned each other's rhythms in dancing and in life. As they spun beneath the same chandeliers where their story had begun, Vivienne caught sight of their reflection in the ballroom's mirrored walls. No longer the humiliated socialite and the helpful MR maintenance worker, but partners, equals, two people who had defied expectations and found strength in vulnerability, beauty in imperfection. "What are you thinking?" Darius asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "That sometimes," Vivienne replied, "the most precious things in life are found in the most unexpected places." "Like maintenance closets?" Darius teased. "Like the eyes of someone who truly sees you," Vivienne corrected, her gaze locking with H's. "And loves you anyway." The music swelled around them, but they heard only the rhythm of their hearts beating in tandem, a melody that would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. In the corner of the ballroom, A photographer captured the moment. The couple lost in their own world, surrounded by the unlikely family they had built together. The photograph would later hang in their home, a reminder that love, when it's real, doesn't conform to society's expectations. It transforms them. The end.